So the next item we're going to look at is speeding and the speed report here. Now, speeding is a little tricky because in Canada we don't have the luxury of being able to know the speed limits off the street based on the map. So here we're showing the map, and I'm just going to click that. You can click this vehicle tabs to bring up your vehicles or to make it go away. Now, you can't see it here, but what I've done is I took a screenshot of the zones that I created here, and I created one called St. Norbert, and I created another one called Inside the Perimeter. And we're using these zones to essentially create speeding rules for us. So again, looking at this special zone, I've tried to exclude the parts of the city that have 90 km/h speed limits. I mean, I don't think there's vehicles driving around on these rural roads here. But basically, so anywhere inside this area, we're checking for speeding 80 kilometers or higher. Now, I'm going to go ahead and create the rule to show you exactly how we're going to do this. So we're going into our rules. Now this, you don't have to do this every time. This is something that I'm setting up right now and will now work from this point forward, but it gives you an idea of how rules are created. So I'm going to go ahead and add a rule, and we're going to add a new rule. Speeding greater than, and let's just say 85 kilometers an hour. We'll make it yellow. So this is a driving exception, and this driving exception is related to a particular zone type. Now, I could have selected just the one zone, but what I did is I created a zone type that said any part where the speed limit doesn't exceed 80 kilometers an hour. So we're going to select that zone type, and we're going to say any time that this vehicle is inside a zone that is assigned the 80 km/h speed limit. And that's for all our devices, for the entire organization, any time of the day, because speed limits don't change after hours, and we're not using PTOs. So here's where the actual rule comes into play. So driving faster than, and I said 85 kilometers an hour, and just in case he's just trying to get past a vehicle, we're going to say he has to do it for 10 seconds or longer. Then he's basically cruising, and that helps eliminate the false positives. So earlier I created a speeding exception for 108 kilometers an hour for outside the perimeter, and here's 85 kilometers an hour for inside the perimeter. Clearly this isn't going to catch speeders who are speeding, say, 75 kilometers an hour on a 60 kilometer area zone, but for that we would have to create more zones in the system. We won't do that right now. When we create a new zone, we have to recalculate the data, and basically we go through this wizard. I won't show it here, but that allows us to apply all of our new rules to old historic information. So now let's take a look at how we view this, and we touched on this before. We go into our exceptions report, and once again we'll pick a day. We'll pick a range of days here. Pick our vehicle. Now this is the same thing we did before, where before we had our engine rules for our harsh braking and accelerating. We've now added our speeding rules, and they are actually GPS rules. So great, we have our two categories of speeding. So we're going to select them, and we're going to hit apply. And here we have, again, a list of every incident when a vehicle has violated the speeding rules that we've created. So in one case, there's one incident of speeding inside the city. And again, the reason we use the reports inside the software is that we have the ability to double click and go to a map. The Excel reports are for situations where where you're going to want to look at the information, but viewing it inside the GPS system is a good way to be able to double click on them and go link to these maps here. So here we go. It's obviously on, it was a Sturgeon Road, Brookside. So either I have not made my zone end soon enough, and this actually is a false positive, and I'm going to have to redo the zone so it doesn't happen, or this guy is accelerating beyond the speed limit, but before he before it was time. Other instances here, let's pick one at random. So just speeding on the perimeter, 111 kilometers an hour. You can see the little star that appears over top of it. So any rule that we create is going to create these little stars on the map. So as you're looking at it, at the history, we'll be able to see this information. You'll know exactly where it is because of the star. Again, we can sort them, and we can also do a summary, and we can also print this out too. In this case, I just left the defaults in here. I usually find that there's no reason to actually report on this. Looking at it inside the system is good enough. Again, if we want to summarize for the entire month. So 8 instances of speeding over 108 kilometers an hour, 6 minutes worth of this, and for distances totaling 12 kilometers an hour. And then just that one instance inside the city. So not a big lead foot inside the perimeter, a little heavy on the outskirts. Now, just to clarify, on the main screen we have our driver scorecard, and we have our speeding band here. Now, this is not tied to the exception rules that we do. This is based on predefined speeds defined in our system settings here. So anytime the vehicle is driving for 16 seconds or longer at these speeds, it's adding to the speed band, or it's adding to the speed demerits right here. So moving forward, I'm looking at redoing this report to exclude the speeding from those speed bands, because it doesn't capture any inner perimeter speeding, and doing something like this where I've added just a count of how many instances are happening, and then that's going to be replacing this. So I think moving forward, that'll be a better way to handle it. In the meantime, we have the means to check on speeding through our exception report. And clearly the exception report can be done at the same time that you're checking for your harsh driving. You can check for your speeding as well too. And again, harsh driving, idling, speeding, it won't be hard to create a rule that says if you're idling longer than a minute, 2 minutes, that goes into the exception report too. So you can see how, even though we're kind of looking at this individually, we can put it all together into a single report once we have that established.